beautiful friends, and welcome back to my channel. This is Nova Gnome Creations, and I'm Nova, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a gnome golf club head cover. So for this project, what are you going to need? You are going to need a yarn in the color of the body that you want worked up. This is also going to be the actual golf club head cover itself, so you're going to want quite a bit of this color. You're going to need just a little bit of a color for the hat. You're going to need a very small amount of a color for the hands and the nose. And you're going to need a little bit of yarn for the beard. So you're just going to need 4 colors of yarn, unless you want to do color changes or anything, wild with it that you choose to do. But for the purposes of the tutorial, you're just going to need a beard color, a skin color, an outfit color, and a hat color. As far as your crochet hook goes, I used a 5mm hook. I recommend using a 5mm, or if you want to follow your ball band recommendation, typically for a worsted weight yarn, which is what you're going to want to use for this project, it is a 5 or a 5.5mm hook. I went ahead and used a 5mm. I think either of which will be perfectly fine for giving you the gauge that you want for a golf club head cover. You're also going to want some scissors, a stitch marker or 2, and a darning needle, otherwise known as a yarn needle. I prefer these bent tip kind, but you can use any that you want. To begin, we're going to go ahead and make our little arms and little hands. So go ahead and grab your skin tone colored yarn and the color of yarn that you plan on using for the main body of your golf club head cover, which will look a little something like this. Before we do anything to it, this is not fully extended, but just to give you an idea, this is going to be the body of your gnome. So the color that you choose for your golf club head cover is going to be the body of your gnome. So go ahead and grab the color you're going to use for that, set that to the side, and pull forward your skin tone. We're going to start with that, and we are going to start by making the hands. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a magic circle. If you need a slowed down tutorial of how to make a magic circle, I will have one linked in the description box below where I went more in depth and slow about how to. But just real quick, I'll show you the way that I do mine. I like to take these 2 fingers and lay my yarn over it with the end that is not connected to anything facing towards me, and I secure it with my thumb. Then I take the yarn that's attached to my ball and I wrap it around and I overlap it like an X across itself. Then I like to just secure that with my ring finger in the back. Then I go under the first loop of yarn with my hook and I grab the second loop and I pull that forward in front of the first one and I turn so that I have a loop on my hook. Then you're just going to take your working yarn, which is the yarn that's attached to your ball or your skein. You're going to yarn over and pull through. Just a chain. And that is how you make your magic circle. So if you need a little extra help, like I said, that tutorial is down below in the description box. And if you really don't like doing a magic circle and you have a different preferred method for starting working in the round, like the chaining method, feel free to do that instead. All right, so now that you've got your magic circle, we are going to work 5 single crochets into our magic circle. And don't forget, when you're working in a magic circle, you work over both the circle itself and this tail of yarn. So we're just working 3, 4, and 5 single crochets into our magic circle, and then you're going to take this tail of yarn and you're going to pull on it gently so that you can close up your circle. Don't pull it super tightly just yet. We want to go ahead and work into this first stitch of the next round, which is just going to be going back to the first single crochet that we made. It's a little bit easier to get into this stitch when you haven't cinched up your circle super tight. So once you're into that stitch, you're going to place a single crochet, and you're actually going to place a second single crochet in the same stitch. So that is an increase. And then now, if you want to, you can go ahead and tug on that magic circle tail and get that nice and tightly closed. And I like to place a stitch marker into the first stitch of my round just helps me to keep track. So if you are using a stitch marker, which I do highly recommend, go ahead and put it in that first single crochet that we placed into this increase here. Now you're just going to place an increase into every stitch around. So this is 5 stitches that we started out with in our magic circle. And because we're increasing in each stitch, which means we're placing a single crochet into each stitch, we are going to have 10 stitches around when we get back to our stitch marker. Okay. So now we have come back to our stitch marker here, which means we have 10 single crochets in our round here. We are just going to single crochet into each of those stitches. So I popped my stitch marker out so that I could single crochet into that first stitch, and now I'm just replacing it because it's my new first stitch of the round. And then you're just going to single crochet into each stitch all the way around. And as your work begins to cup up, just let it face the way that your magic circle tail is on the inside of your work. That is how you know the inside of your work from the outside. You may also be able to tell by looking at it. The stitches do look a little bit different on the front and the back. And this is traditionally considered to be the outside of your work. So just let it cup up naturally that the tail is on the inside. If it's cupping up, towards you, you can just easily manipulate it with your fingers to cup the way that you want it to cup. All right, now that we've got those 10 single crochets, we are going to go ahead and remove our stitch marker and single crochet into that first stitch and replace your stitch marker. I'm going to show you how to make the thumb this round. So we have 1 single crochet. We're going to go ahead and single crochet 3 more times so that we have a total of 4 single crochets. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 single crochets. And then you're going to chain 2, and you're going to slip stitch down into the front of the single crochet, and that is how you make your picot. So you're going to go under this front loop of the top of your stitch, and then you're also going to go under this first bar of the front of your single crochet. So let me show you a little bit more detailed. This is where you normally go under a stitch. This is the top of the single crochet. This is the front of the single crochet, which has a V shape to it. You're going to go under the front loop, which is the loop closest to you of the top of your stitch. You're also going to go under the front bar of the front of your stitch. So you're going to put your hook through both of these. And then you are going to slip stitch by yarning over and pulling through, and then continuing to pull through the loop that's on your hook. And that's going to give you your little thumb. Then you're just going to continue single crocheting all the way around. So you've got 5 single crochets, a picot, and then 5 single crochets. And that is going to be your little thumb round. Now for the next round, we're going to do a little bit of decreasing, which will be a little bit different because we've got this thumb here. Now to decrease, or for this round, I'm sorry, you're going to remove your stitch marker and you're going to single crochet into that first stitch. So go ahead and replace your stitch marker. We are going to do 3 single crochets in total, so that includes the one your stitch marker is in. And then you're going to do an invisible decrease. An invisible decrease is done by going under only the front loop, which is that loop closest to you, of the first stitch and the second stitch. You're going to have 3 loops on your hook, and then you'll yarn over and you'll pull through the 2 loops that you just put on there, and then you'll yarn over again and you'll pull through these other 2 loops. And that's how you do an invisible decrease. Now the next stitch is actually on the other side of your thumb. So you're going to want to work through that stitch, but make sure you keep your thumb facing the outside of your work. So however is easiest for you to make sure you do that. You can go ahead and yarn over and then just take a moment to kind of tug your thumb out here if you want to. However works best for you. And then you're going to want to make sure this stitch is pretty tight. So give it a little tug just so that you don't have any little gap behind your thumb. And then you're going to go ahead and single crochet 2 more times. So that's a total of 3 if you count the one behind the thumb. And then you're decreasing one last time right before your stitch marker. So that means that this round is 3 single crochets, a decrease, and then 3 single crochets and a decrease. All right, and now we are ready to switch to our shirt color. So for our shirt color, we actually want to have our shirt color on our hook here at the end. If you would like to, you can just pull the loop through right here and have your shirt color on. Or you can pull it over as your last loop of your decrease. So let me show you how you do that. So you've got your decrease here. You go through your first loop of both of those stitches. Then you yarn over and pull through. And then before you yarn over and pull through that last time, you're actually going to grab your shirt color and you're going to put it on your hook, and then you'll actually just pull that color through for the last yarn over pull through. And then what we can do is we can tug on this a little bit, our working yarn of the skin tone, and go ahead and cut that. And then I'm going to tie together my 2 tails. So this was my skin tone I was working with and the tail of my blue yarn. I like to just make a little knot so that everything stays nice and tight and I don't have to worry about anything coming out while I'm crocheting. There we go. And then now we ended the round with our new color on our hook. Now we're just going to be doing some single crochet. So you can go ahead and take this stitch marker out, single crochet in that first stitch in your new color. We are going to be single crocheting around for 5 rounds. So you should have 4 stitches in your round now, since we did 2 sets of decreases last round. I'm sorry, we shouldn't have 4 stitches. That doesn't make any sense. We should have 8 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And at this point, if you would like to go ahead and tuck all these tails in, if you haven't already, you can go for that. So, you know, your magic circle tail, your tails from changing colors, all that can just go in the hand. That is actually the only stuffing you need for this project, for the hand, because it doesn't need to be stuffed. The yarn tails will give it a little stuffing, and then the rest of it can kind of lay flat for the arm, but that's up to personal preference, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker, and I'm just going to continue to do my repeats. I want to do 5 rounds in total. So go ahead and do 5 rounds of single crochet. You'll have 8 in each round. And then once you've got those 5 rounds of single crochet, we are going to single crochet the 2 layers together. And once you've got your 5 rounds of single crochet, it should be looking like this. Got your little thumb, got your hand, and your arm. We are going to end our arm here by doing a single crochet layer across the top where we sandwich the 2 layers together. So to do that, we are going to still be attached on just like we were, and we're going to work through the stitch that's, you know, the next stitch, but also the stitch across from the next stitch. So you're actually sandwiching the 2 layers together and pushing your hook through this next stitch and the stitch across from it when you push this flat. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through, and yarn over and pull through. Just a normal single crochet, but you're working it through 2 layers of crochet. So you're going to do that for the next stitch as well. Work a single crochet through both layers, and one more time you're going to go through both layers and work a single crochet. And it should look like this on the top, and your little arm is complete. So to finish off your arm, I like to do a chain before I tie off, and then you can just cut your yarn. You don't need a very long tail because we are going to work this arm into the body of our golf club head cover. And you're just going to repeat the same thing again so that you have 2 arms. So if you need to, you can rewind the tutorial to watch how to make the arm again, or if you just remember how to make it now, you can go ahead and make that other arm and then meet me back here, and we will continue on with the body of our gnome and also the golf club head cover. So to do our golf club head cover, we are going to go ahead and grab the color that you want your outfit to be for your gnome. So go ahead and grab that color, and we're going to start out by making a magic circle, which if you need a little bit of help, extra help with that, like I said, the tutorial that I have slowed down for that is in the description box. You can always refer to that at any time if you need a little bit of extra help with a magic circle. And we are going to go ahead and work 6 single crochets into our magic circle this time. So don't forget, you're working over the circle itself, the side of the circle, and the tail. So go ahead and work 6 single crochets into your magic circle. 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we are going to go ahead and pull on our little tail here. Don't pull it super tight just yet, but pull it so that it's closed, and go ahead and work into that first single crochet that we made. And we are going to work an increase, so you're going to put 2 single crochets into that same stitch. Now you can go ahead and pop your stitch marker into that first stitch that we made, and you can pull on your magic circle tail and close up your circle nice and tight. We're going to work an increase in every stitch around. So we have 6 stitches at the end of round 1, and we're working an increase, which is 2 single crochets into each stitch for this round. So when we get back to the beginning, when we get back to our stitch marker, we will have 12 stitches in total. And at any point when you are working, if your magic circle feels like it is coming open and you haven't gotten it to really cinch up enough yet, feel free to pull on that. Usually it'll hit kind of a point when you're pulling on it, you'll feel it kind of give more, and then it really like locks in the magic circle. That's my experience anyway. So now that we are done with round 2, we have 12 stitches all the way around. We are going to go ahead and remove our stitch marker, and we are going to work a single crochet into our first stitch. Go ahead and replace your stitch marker, and then you're going to work an increase. So into that next stitch, you're going to work 2 single crochets. And that is going to be the repeat for the round. So you're going to work a single crochet and then an increase. A single crochet, and then an increase. And you're going to do that in every stitch around, single crochet and then an increase. It's going to be a total of 6 repeats of single crochet and increase. And that is going to take you from 12 stitches to 18 stitches. So when you get back to your stitch marker, if you want to count, if you're just double checking your work, then you will have 18 stitches. Another sign that you're doing your stitches, your stitch count right, is you should be ending on an increase when you get back to your stitch marker. All right, and for round 4, we are going to be doing a single crochet in that first stitch and replacing our stitch marker. and then you're going to place a single crochet into the next stitch. Now we're going to do an increase into the third stitch, and that is going to be our repeat for the round. So you are going to work a single crochet, a single crochet, and then an increase. And you're just going to repeat that sequence of single crochet, increase 6 times in total. That's going to bring you back to your stitch marker for a total of 24 stitches. And same as before, you will end on an increase. So there we've got our increase. 1, 2, increase. And 1, 2, increase. All right, so that's round 4 and a total of 24 stitches all the way around. For round 5, we're going to go ahead and remove our stitch marker and work a single crochet into that first stitch. And then we're going to work a single crochet into the next 2 stitches. So you're working a total of 3 single crochets, and then we're going to work an increase. So 3 single crochets, and then in that 4th stitch, you're going to put 2 single crochets in the same stitch for an increase. And that is going to be your repeat for this round. So 3 single crochets and an increase is the sequence for round 5. You're going to do that 6 times. That's going to take you from 24 stitches to 30 stitches all the way around. And you will be ending on an increase at the end of the round for round 5. One, 2, 3, and increase. Now for round 6, we are going to remove our stitch marker. You're going to put a single crochet in the first stitch and replace your stitch marker. And then you're going to put a single crochet in the second stitch, and then you're going to increase into the third stitch. After that third stitch, we are going to start a sequence of single crocheting in the next 4 stitches, 3 and 4, and then increasing. And you're going to do that a total of 5 times. So you're going to do 4 single crochets, oops, and 4, and then an increase. You're going to do that a total of 5 times, and then you'll be left with 2 single crochets before the end of the round. So you are not ending on an increase this round. You are actually going to be ending on a single crochet. So go ahead and work your 4 single crochets, and then your increase. And you should have 30 stitches at the beginning of this round. When you get back to the end and you're ending on those 2 single crochets, you are going to have 36 stitches. So now I'm putting my last increase in, and single crochet, single crochet. So you know you're on the right path here if your single crochets, if you got to the end and you had those 2 stitches left, to put the 2 single crochets in. Okay, so that was round 6, and we had 36 stitches all the way around. Now we are going to do a round of single crochets in every stitch. So you're going to be working a total of 36 single crochets in every stitch all the way around. And that is going to be round 7. So go ahead and work those single crochets into every stitch around. All right, and once you've worked your way back around, it should be looking like this. For round 8, we're going to go ahead and work 7 single crochets. So go ahead and work your first single crochet and put your stitch marker back in if you are using one. And then work 6 more single crochet. That will give you a total of 7 single crochet. If you worked 4 stitches across the top of your arm and not 3, go ahead and just work 6 single crochet here instead of 7. Then we are going to want to put our arm on here. The front of the work is going to be this side, directly across from our stitch marker or where we started. So you're going to want to make sure that your thumb is facing forward, because it would look a little funny if your thumb was facing backwards on your gnome. So once you've got your thumb facing forwards, we are going to go ahead and sandwich it on top of the work. So on the front of the work, just lay it flat. The back of the work is going to be the side with the magic circle tail. That's the inside of your work. This is the top of your work that you want to sandwich it against. And we are just going to be working through both layers. So we're going to work through the single crochets on the hand or on the arm and the single crochets on the body at the same time. So you're going to go through that first stitch on your arm and through the next stitch on the body. And you're going to do that all across the top. So if you've got 3 stitches here on your arm, you'll be doing 3 stitches. If you have 4 on your arm, you'll be doing 4. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. It'll just change how many stitches you do before you start attaching your arm. And then once you have got those all sandwiched together and crocheted through, you're going to pull this tail onto the inside of your work to get it out of your way, and tuck it on the inside. Now after your arm, we are going to work 15 single crochets. So 15 single crochets until we get to where we want to put our next arm. Alright, and when you get your 15 single crochets, we're going to do the same thing. You want to make sure that your thumb is facing forward. So look at where your other thumb is facing and make sure it's facing the same way. And then we are going to sandwich these 2 layers together. And you can either tuck the string from the arm into the body, or you can go ahead and weave it into the arm. It's up to you. If you would rather tuck it into the body and sew it in later, or if you would rather, sew it down into the arm now. I will show you real quick. It's really, really simple. Because this is like a little amigurumi arm, you just can hide the string in the body. So I literally just go through somewhere nearby where it's coming out of and take my needle and push it through and pop it out further down. Pull that yarn through and boom, it's hidden. That's all you got to do. And then you can either stuff the rest of this tail in. I like to use the point of my scissors to kind of stuff it in. It grabs it really well. Or you can cut it off. Either way. It'll add a little bit of extra stuffing to the hand. So if you want a little extra, thickness in the hand, then go ahead and do that. Or you can cut it off either way. And then I just tucked in my little tail bit using my scissors. All right, so that's all you got to do. If you would like to do it that way, go ahead and go for it. Otherwise, you can just sew it in like we did with the magic circle tail earlier on the body. We're going to sandwich these 2 layers together and crochet through them. If you have 3, then you'll be doing 3 stitches. If you have 3 stitches across the top of your arm. If you have 4, then you'll be doing 4 stitches across the top of your arm. And if you do have 3 stitches across the top of your arm, after you finish your arm, you will have 8 single crochets to do. If you have 4 stitches across the top of your arm, then you will have 7 single crochets to do. All right, and then now that you've worked those on, they will look like this when we've got our gnome going. So you've got your little arms hanging down on your gnome. Now you're just going to work a bunch of rounds of single crochet. So you're just going to single crochet from your stitch marker all the way around back to your stitch marker again for 13 rounds. So go ahead and work, or let's do 12 rounds. Go ahead and work 12 rounds of single crochet all the way around. If you would like to, you can weave in any of your tails before it starts getting a little bit longer. If it's easier for you to do that now, or if you would like, you don't really even have to weave them in. They will be on the inside, but they will be in there with the golf club, so it's up to you if you want to weave them in. Don't cut your magic circle tail off. Don't take your scissors and just like cut this off to get rid of it, because that will not keep your magic circle from unraveling. You can leave it, but don't cut it off. Unless you weave it in first. If you weave it in a good couple times, let me show you real quick. I'll go ahead and show you if you're weaving in your tail. So you've got your magic circle tail here in the middle. It's really important that you don't cut that off, because your whole magic circle can come unraveled if you do that. To weave in your tail, you can literally do this however you want. You're just going to want to grab some of these loops and weave your tail in. And if you've got space to do it around your magic circle, you can actually go around your magic circle a few times, but my magic circle was pulled really tightly and I don't think I could have gotten my needle through, so I didn't try. When I'm weaving in tails, what I find really helps secure it is, see, I worked right here. I like to go over the same area a few times. So don't go right back into the same spot you just came out, but maybe go over that one and go into the next one, or go like halfway through the stitch and catch the fibers. If you can catch the fibers of the stitch, that's actually even better, because you're literally taking this little piece of yarn and getting it all tangled up in those little fibers in the middle of the piece of yarn. It's going to keep it even more secure. So that is just the way that I like to do it. And you can weave that in as many times as you want to, until you're confident with it. But go ahead and single crochet around 12 times and then meet me back for the next part. When you get your 12 rounds done, it should be looking a little something like this. You can go ahead and just pull up on your hook to give yourself a nice big loop here. And we're going to set this aside for the moment because we need to make the rest of our accessory pieces and sew those on before continuing. Once you start working on the next part, finishing up the body of the gnome / the actual cover portion for the golf heads, it starts to cinch in and we start to do this little ribbed part. When we do the ribbed part, it's going to make it really difficult to get up in here and sew pieces on. So personally, I think that it's easier to go ahead and stop here and go ahead and make the other parts and sew them on. So I'm just going to set this little dude aside for now. And I'm going to get the color that I want to make my beard out of. You can use any color you want, of course. You can use any color for any part of this. You could make it a rainbow if you wanted to. And we're going to go ahead and grab a stitch marker for this part. If you want, you can take the stitch marker out of your gnome. I'm just going to leave mine in there and grab a different stitch marker. And we're going to begin our beard. So for our beard, we are going to start with a magic circle. So go ahead and make your magic circle. And then in that magic circle, we are going to place 6 single crochets. And we are not going to be stuffing this piece, by the way, either. Four, 5, and 6. Then you can go ahead and pull on your little magic circle tail here and gently cinch this up. I'm going to wait a minute to pull it tight. And in that first single crochet that you made, we are going to go ahead and place a single crochet. And I'm going to put my stitch marker in it. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull tight on my magic circle tail. All right, so we had 6 single crochets, and then now for round 2, we are going to do a single crochet, which we just did, then another single crochet, then an increase. So 2 single crochets in the same stitch there. Then we're going to do a single crochet, a single crochet, and an increase. So for this round, you're repeating twice, single crochet, increase. So you're going to end on an increase. That is going to put you at 8 stitches all the way around. Then you can go ahead and pop your stitch marker out. And for round 3, we're going to place a single crochet into our first stitch. And then you're going to replace that stitch marker. And you're going to single crochet into the second and the third stitch. Then in that fourth stitch, you're going to increase, and your work is going to start cupping. Go ahead and direct it so that it cups with that magic circle tail on the inside of your work. So I'm going to go ahead and place my increase. And then we're going to repeat that same sequence again. So single crochet 3 times. And then increase. And you will be ending on an increase. And there for round 3, you're going to have 10 stitches all the way around. Go ahead and pop your stitch marker out. And for round 4, we're going to place a single crochet into our first stitch and replace our stitch marker. And then we are going to single crochet in the following 3 stitches. So we're going to have a total of 4 single crochets. And that's 3, 4, and increase. Let me pull some yarn up. So we're going to go ahead and increase in this stitch. So you should have 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then an increase. And then you're just going to repeat the same thing again. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then an increase. And for round 4, you're going to have 12 stitches all the way around. Now for round 5, you can go ahead and pop your stitch marker out and place a single crochet. And replace that stitch marker. You're going to do 1 more single crochet, and then you're going to increase. And that is going to be the repeat for the round. So we are just going to do 2 single crochets and then increase. 2 single crochets and increase. And you're going to do that a total of 4 times. So once you've done your 2 single crochet increase 4 times, you'll be back at your stitch marker ending on an increase stitch, and you will have 16 stitches all the way around from your stitch marker to the end. For round 6, you can go ahead and place that first single crochet and pop your stitch marker back in. And then you're going to place 2 more single crochets and an increase. You're going to repeat that same sequence 4 times. So you're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase 4 times all the way around. and that is for round 6, and you will end on an increase stitch. That'll be your last stitch before your stitch marker. And when you get to the end of the round, you should have 20 single crochets, 20 stitches all the way around. For round 7, you can go ahead and place that first single crochet. And then you're going to single crochet in the next 3 stitches for a total of 4 stitches. And then you're going to increase. And that is going to be a repeat. So you're going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you're going to increase. You're going to repeat that 4 times, and that is going to bring you back to your stitch marker, and you are going to have 24 stitches all the way around. And your final stitch will be an increase. Three and 4, and then ending here on an increase. Now for round 8, we are just going to single crochet into every stitch. So you are going to start out the round with 24 stitches, and you're going to end the round with 24 stitches. You're not doing any increases, just a single crochet into every stitch all the way around until you get back to your stitch marker. And once you get back to your stitch marker, it should be looking a little something like this. You can go ahead and tuck that magic circle tail down into your beard. No need to do anything with it other than just hide it inside of there. And for the next round, which is round 9, we're going to do a little bit of decreasing. So go ahead and pop your stitch marker out and put that first single crochet into that first stitch and replace it. Then you're going to work 3 more single crochets for a total of 4 single crochets. Then we're going to do a decrease, and I'm going to do an invisible decrease. So I'm going to grab the front loop only of this first stitch and the front loop only of the second stitch, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. And that is going to be the repeat for this round. You're just going to do 4 single crochets and then a decrease. If you prefer a regular decrease to an invisible decrease, that's totally fine. That's just a personal preference. It's not going to change anything with the pattern. It's not going to ruin it or anything like that. It's just a personal preference. I prefer the way that an invisible decrease looks on my amigurumi. And even though this is a golf club cover, it's also sort of an amigurumi, so I'm just preferring to use my invisible decrease. But if you don't like the invisible decrease or you have trouble doing it, feel free to use a regular decrease. And you should be ending on a decrease stitch right before your stitch marker. And then that is actually the end. You can go ahead and pop your stitch marker out. And now we are going to do the same thing that we did for the arms. You're going to sandwich both layers of the beard together with your crochet hook over here at the far right so that you can crochet across. And then you're just going to work through both layers. So work through the next stitch and then the stitch that's directly across from there. And you're just going to do that all the way down. You should have about 10 stitches. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then if you want, you can end there, or you can go into this last stitch. It's kind of by itself. Why is this white yarn in here? There we go. I'm going to work into that, and I'm basically just going to kind of stick my hook in there and just go around the stitch almost. But it doesn't matter if you have 10 stitches across the top. That's just what I get when I do this. But if you sandwich yours together and you get 9 or however many, that's totally fine, because we're just going to be sewing it on like this. The amount of stitches at the top is not like important to the pattern. Then you can go ahead and chain 1 to tie off. And then you're going to cut your yarn. You're going to want to leave yourself like a really long tail. I'm going to leave myself like a good foot of yarn, because we're going to need to sew this on. And I want to leave myself plenty of yarn. Okay, I actually did more like 2 feet, it looks like. So just leave yourself a nice long tail of yarn. I always like go by the err on the side of too much versus not enough. I can always cut off yarn, but I can't add yarn back on. But when you're sewing, if you do run out of yarn, it's not that big of a deal. You can always just grab some more yarn from your skein and use that to sew with. But that is how we make our beard. And you can go ahead and set your beard to the side, and we're going to make our nose. The nose works up super fast. It is very small. If you want to, you could also use a pom-pom or something for this, like a little, those little puffball pom-poms. If you do that, you'll either need to like sew it on with like a needle and thread or glue it on though. So I would recommend crocheting it, but that is completely up to you. You can always, have artistic liberty and kind of do whatever you want. For this piece, we're going to start out by making a magic circle. So go ahead and make your magic circle. And we are going to single crochet 6 into our magic circle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then you are going to close up your magic circle by pulling on the tail, and you're going to single crochet into that first stitch. And then pull your magic circle all the way closed. I'm not going to put a stitch marker in just yet because this is such a small circle. We're going to be doing a single crochet and then an increase, and that is going to be the repeat for the round. So single crochet, increase, single crochet, if I can get in that stitch, increase, and then one final single crochet and increase. So you started with 6 stitches. You're going to end round 2 with 9 stitches. You're going to do 3 repeats of that single crochet and increase. Then we're going to single crochet 9 stitches all the way around. So now I'll go ahead and pop my stitch marker in. I went ahead and placed that first single crochet, and now I'm just going to single crochet in the 8 stitches that are left, leading me all the way back around to my stitch marker. So you're going to start out the round with 9 stitches, and you will end round 3 with 9 stitches as well. Just like so. And then for the next round, we're going to go ahead and place a single crochet into our first stitch and place our stitch marker, and then we're going to decrease. So I'm going to do my invisible decrease for this second stitch. Then I'm going to do a single crochet into the third stitch. Well, I guess it would be the fourth stitch since we just decreased across 2 stitches. Then you're going to decrease, then you're going to single crochet, and at this point you might want to stop for a second and stick your magic circle tail down into the nose. That's going to basically just be your little bit of stuffing. You don't need to add any extra stuffing to that, unless you want to, of course. And then we're going to decrease for the last 2 stitches. So the repeat for this round is just single crochet decrease, and you do it 3 times. That brings you back to your stitch marker, and it gives you, takes you back to 6 stitches. Gonna go ahead and pop that stitch marker out. And now I'm just going to be decreasing 3 times. I'm going to decrease across all of the remaining stitches. So I'm going to decrease, decrease. And if this gets too tight for you and you can't fit all 3 decreases in, that's totally fine. I think I'm just going to do 2 actually. That's totally fine. You can just stop, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut a nice long tail of yarn because we're going to be sewing with this. And you can go ahead and pull up on your hook. Go ahead and grab your yarn needle. And then we're just going to sew this little end shut. The way that I like to sew the end shut is I like to grab the front loop of the stitches that remain and just go under each of them. I don't pull tight just yet. I just go under the front loop of the stitches that remain. So decrease however much you want to or however much you're comfortable with. And then you're going to go ahead and close up this hole. Once you've got all your front loops gathered, you just pull tightly. And then you can take your needle, go into your nose, and weave it around in here a couple of times. You're going to pull it kind of tight to pull the end into the nose. See how it makes it a little bit better, a better ball, a more rounded look. And I'm just going to do that a couple of times, just kind of sewing my yarn in here. And then I want to pop back out over here where I closed up because I'm going to use that to sew my nose on. So we're going to leave this attached. All right, and the last part that we're going to be making is our little hat. Then we're going to do a little bit of sewing, and then we will finish up making our golf club cover. So go ahead and grab the color that you want to use for your hat. And then we are going to start out by making a magic circle. So go ahead and make your magic circle. And we're going to single crochet 6 into our magic circle. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then you're going to take your tail here and pull it so that you start to gently close up that magic circle. Not quite pulling tight yet, and then we're going to single crochet twice into that first stitch. So we're starting out with an increase. I'm going to go ahead and place my stitch marker into this first stitch I made, and then I'm going to take my tail and give it a nice solid tug and close up that circle. Then I'm going to increase in each stitch around, which is going to take me from 6 stitches to 12 all the way around. Just increase in every stitch. For round 3, you're going to go ahead and pop that stitch marker out and single crochet into that first stitch. And then you're going to increase in the second stitch. Oops. So single crochet increase is going to be the repeat for this round. You're going to repeat it 6 times. And that is going to take you from 12 stitches at the beginning of the round to 18 stitches at the end of the round. And you will be ending on an increase stitch right before your stitch marker. So go ahead and put those single crochet increases. Single crochet, increase, and single crochet, increase. Then you're going to go ahead and pop your stitch marker out. And for round 2, we are going to pop a single crochet into that first stitch and replace our stitch marker. Then you're going to put a single crochet in the second stitch and increase into the third stitch. So single crochet, increase. And that is going to be the repeat for the round. Just 2 single crochets and then an increase, and you're going to do that 6 times, and that will take you back to your stitch marker. And when you get back to your stitch marker, you will be ending on an increase stitch. At the beginning of this round, you started out with 18 stitches, and when you get to the end of this round, you will have 24 stitches all the way around. And ending on an increase there. Should be looking a little something like this now. We are going to go ahead and for the next round, pop your stitch marker out and single crochet and then replace your stitch marker. And we just did 2 increases, right? Yep. So for this next round, you're going to go ahead and do 3 increases, or sorry, 3 single crochets and then an increase. So you're going to single crochet 3 times, 1, 2, and 3, and then you're going to increase. And just like with the rest of the hat, you're going to do that 6 times. And you will be ending on an increase stitch. When you started out this round, you had 24 stitches. And when you get to the end, you will have 30. And ending on that increase. Same as with the other pieces, when it starts to cup, you're going to want to have your magic circle tail on the inside of your work. That will put the outside of the stitches on the outside of your hat. And now we are going to do some single crochet rounds. So go ahead and pop that stitch marker out and place your first single crochet in, and then you are just going to single crochet all the way around for 4 rounds. So single crochet into each stitch all the way around for 4 rounds, and then meet me back. All right, and once you've worked your 4 rounds, it should be looking a little something like this. We're going to go ahead and work round 6. So go ahead and pop your, or not round 6, sorry, round 10. Go ahead and pop your stitch marker out, and we're going to work into this first stitch with a single crochet. And replace your stitch marker. We're going to do another single crochet, and then we're going to do an increase. And then we are going to do 4 single crochets. And then an increase. And we're going to repeat the 4 single crochets in total 5 times. So 4 more times after what I just showed you. You're going to do 4 single crochets. And then you're going to do an increase. And then at the end, you should have 2 stitches remaining, and you're going to put a single crochet into each of them. So you won't be ending this round on an increase. You're going to end this round on a single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then an increase, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and then an increase, and you will have 2 stitches remaining, and you're going to put a single crochet into each of them. That is going to take you up to 36 stitches all the way around. For this next round, we're just going to do some single crochets. So you are going to single crochet into each of the 36 stitches, and that will give you still 36 stitches at the end of the round. And once you've single crocheted in every stitch all the way around, you should still have 36 stitches in your round. You can go ahead and pop your stitch marker out, and we are going to do a back loop only round. So these are all going to be back loop only single crochets. Your back loop is the loop that's furthest from you. So this is the stitch, the whole stitch that you normally work under when you're crocheting. You're going to go under just this loop right here that's furthest from you, leaving this loop closest to you unworked. So go ahead and single crochet in just the back loop onlys all the way around. So you're going to have a total of 36 back loop only single crochets. All right, when you've done your back loop only round, it will look like this. You'll get this nice little ridge here, and then your row of single crochet. Now we're going to work the brim of our hat. So I'm just going to start right here. This was where my round ended. I just went ahead and removed my stitch marker. And I'm going to start out by doing front loop only single crochets. So yep, we're literally going to do a back loop only round and then immediately come and do some front loop only stitches. Front loop only, same as before, but instead of being in the back loop, you're in the front loop. We're going to work 10 front loop only single crochets. So 2, and I am going to pop my stitch marker into that first one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 single crochets in the front loop only. Then we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. We're going to work into that same single crochet that we just made by making a half double crochet. So you're going to yarn over your hook and go through, and then you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you'll yarn over and pull through all 3 loops that are on your hook. We're going to do that 3 times, sorry. So another half double crochet, a third half double crochet. Then we're going to work double crochet, which is done by yarning over your hook, going through the single crochet. You're going to yarn over and pull up, yarn over and pull through 2 of the loops, yarn over and pull through 2 of the loops. So that's how you do a double crochet. We're going to do 4 of those. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you're going to work 3 more half double crochets. That is going to have you end in that first stitch that we made, that first single crochet that your stitch marker is currently in. So I'm going to go ahead and pop out my stitch marker and put that last half double crochet into there. Oop. All right, then I'm going to go over 1 more stitch and I'm going to single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. I'm going to slip stitch into every stitch across. So that's going to be 11 slip stitches. Actually, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. You're going to slip stitch into every stitch across, but you're actually going to skip that single crochet that we made there at the end. So it's going to be 10 slip stitches across. You're going to skip this first stitch and you're going to slip stitch into all 10 of the other stitches. And you might want to keep these slip stitches just a little bit loose so that it doesn't cup too much. If you make really tight slip stitches, it might cup your work a little more than you want. This is the brim of your hat, so if it cups, that's totally fine. Hat brims do cup, but you might not want to keep you might want to focus on keeping your tension a little bit loose. And that last one, and then when you get to the end of the 10 stitches and you've done all your slip stitches, we're going to go 1 more stitch over and we're going to single crochet into that stitch. All right, and that is the end of our hat. So you're going to go ahead, chain 1 to tie off. You're going to leave a super long tail because we need to be able to sew with it. So leave yourself a nice long tail. Then you can pull up on your hook and pull this yarn through. That might have been an excessively long tail I left, but that's okay. We'll see. And then you're going to take your tail from your hat that you just made, go ahead and put it on your hook. And you notice that we ended on a single crochet. There's like a little bit of a height difference. I'm just going to go right into that next stitch and pull through. And that is going to make that height difference a little less obvious. Pull it down, basically just like, you know, we slip stitched on the other side. So there we go. Now, this is the way that I am going to attach mine. You are welcome to attach yours in any way you want. You could hot glue them if you wanted to. The reason I'm not going to hot glue for this particular project is we live in Texas, and as this is going to be a golf club cover, I don't want it melting in the Texas heat because golf is played outside. It could be out in, you know, over 100-degree weather, direct sunlight. And I just don't want to take a chance of the glue melting and sticking to golf clubs or anything like that. So that is the reason that I would advise you not to use hot glue for this particular project. But if you would like to, that is of course your decision. And you can always attach things in the way that you want to. I'm going to show you how I plan to sew mine on. Okay, so go ahead and gather up all of your little pieces here. The very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my beard and I'm actually going to attach it to my hat. I'm doing this so that when my hat and my beard and everything are attached to my gnome, there is no gap in between my hat and my beard. That's a pet peeve of mine. I don't like it when you can see a gap above the beard before the hat starts. So I'm going to go ahead and put my tail for my beard onto my needle. And what I'm going to do is, remember that single crochet round that we did when we were working our brim, that we worked in the front loop only? Well, the reason that I had us work in the front loop only for those 10 stitches is, if you recall, our beard is 10 stitches across the top here. So this makes for a super easy sewing because we can literally just sew it to those loops. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to find the first loop. I'm going to put my needle through it. And then I'm going to go through the first loop on my beard. And this is how I'm going to sew my beard to my hat. This is not necessary if you don't want to do this step. You can just go directly to sewing the beard and the hat onto your gnome body. This is just how I'm doing mine because, like I said, it is a personal preference. I really don't like it when there's a gap between my hat and my beard. And this means that there won't be a possibility of that because they're attached together. So, and I did design it with this in mind so that this is super easy to sew together. It lines up perfectly. This will also make sure that your beard is centered with the brim of your hat. So I'm just catching those front loops. And actually, if you wanted to, you could go through these back loops. And then if you wanted, you could actually go through just the front loops on the beard. That might actually work even better. I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of these. So I'm getting those free loops that I left and going through my beard loops. Perfect. And then I'm just going to take my beard yarn off of my hook, or off of my needle, and I'm going to grab my nose. And the nose I'm going to sew onto the beard. So I'm going to go ahead and put my nose onto my yarn for my nose onto my needle. And then I'm going to center it and see where I want it. I'm going to sew it onto my beard, and I'm also going to attach the brim of the hat to the top of the nose because that will make this really cute little gnome face shape. Because the idea for a gnome is that they have eyes, but the eyes are hidden up under the hat. So I want to give that impression, and I'm just going to sew right through both layers, by the way, because you're not going to see the back layer of this beard. So just for ease of sewing, I'm literally just pulling through both layers. And I'm just sewing my nose onto here. You want to give it a good few times of passing through, just because this is something that's going to be tugged on and, you know, messed with a lot since it's going to be taken on and off of the golf club. You want to make sure that you have everything sewn on really securely. Otherwise, it could get messed up when it's being put on and off of the golf club. And these may also get washed, like, oops, gathered that extra piece of yarn into there. If they end up dirty, you know, things like that. So I'm just going to put some extra care into sewing this on really well. But there's really no special way of sewing it on. I'm just going in through some of the underside of my nose and then, oops, popping back out the back of my beard. And I'm just sort of working my way around in a circle, gathering up more and more of the nose itself. And then attaching it to the beard. All right, once you feel like you've got it nice and attached to the beard, you can go through the beard and pop out the top of the nose. So I'm going through the beard and through the nose, and I'm going to pop out the top with my needle, just like this. I'm going to go ahead and pull that through. Believe it or not, you can't even see where I've been stitching this onto here since I've been pulling tightly. It's actually been going in between the stitches. That's pretty surprising, actually. Then we're just going to sew this onto here. Now, you do have the option of sewing this onto here with the hat color, or you can just use the nose color. It's totally up to you. What I'm going to do is I'm probably going to first sew it to these free loops here in the back. I'm going to try to make it not show through the front. So I'm just going to sew it to the top here, but I'm going to work on the inside of my hat, if that makes sense. But once I start sewing the hat onto the gnome, I will probably also sew this down a little bit more. I'm going to gather some more of these the backs of these loops, fold it over so I can see where I want it, and attach it to the nose. Just like that. And then that'll make it so that my hat stays folded down over my nose. It doesn't flip up. It doesn't ruin the illusion, you know, that there are eyes and the rest of the face under the hat. Once you've got your hat attached to the nose the way that you want it, you can go ahead and just weave your tail back into your nose. And I'm going to pop mine out the back of the beard. Now I'm going to weave my tail in a couple of times back here. Like I said, this part of my beard isn't going to show, so I'm not worried about hiding my yarn. And I'm just going to weave this back and forth a few times to secure my yarn tail and make sure that everything that I just sewed stays where I want it to stay. Since this could see heavy use, I don't want to take a chance of anything coming unraveled. And once you're happy with the sewing here, you can actually go ahead and cut this yarn because we are done attaching the nose. We won't need this yarn again. All right. So here is what we are looking like. Starting to come together really nicely. Now we're just going to attach our hat onto our gnome itself. And what you're going to want to do for this is you're going to want to place this so that it is facing forward with your beard centered between the arms. So like this. I'm going to work in a circle around the hat, sewing the hat onto the body, and then I'm going to also attach the beard to the body, similar to how I just showed you guys how to do the nose. So I'm going to start out with my hat color. And like I said, I did leave an exorbitantly long tail for this, but I would rather have too much than not enough. You are welcome to stuff the hat if you want as you're going, or leave it unstuffed. That is completely up to you and your personal preference. and just trying to kind of situate all these bajillion tails that I've got going on right now. And then line my hat up how I want it. If you would like to, you can pin your hat to the body to keep it from moving, to make it like for sure lined up how you want it. I'm probably just gonna hold it here with my hand. I'm gonna hold on to the beard once I've got it set up. So I'm just gonna have my hand inside of the hat, and I'm gonna go ahead and start sewing my hat onto my body. And this is a time where I'm really glad that I have a bent tip needle, because it makes it easier to go under and then pull back out. But I'm just sewing and then I go back and sew a little bit. So I'm going through and pulling out forward like maybe a centimeter, and then I'm actually going backwards and going back through and then doing it again. And now that I'm in line with the nose, if I want to attach my hat to my nose a little bit more, this would be the time to do that. So I think I will, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and go in through the back, and I'm popping out on the front of the nose, and then I'm also going to go through the hat layer. Then I'm just going to go over a little bit, and I'm going to go through the nose, and I'm going to pop back out on my hat. And I'm going to pull that nice and tight. So now I've got a nice rounded brim that is going to stay where I want it to, and that is how I like mine to sit. So I'm just going to keep working my way all around the brim the way that I've shown you and sewing this on. Like I said, I'm holding it in place by the beard, but as I go, it's holding itself where I have it. And I will continue to pause and make sure that I've got it lined up how I want. And I'm just going to sew this on super well. So go ahead and do that. Like I said, if you want to stuff it, this is your chance to go ahead and do that. As you get it more sewn on, just stick some polyfill up under there. And then once you're done attaching your hat, you're going to do the same thing with the beard. The same thing I just showed you with the nose, where you want to attach the bottom to the body. So go ahead and do that, and then meet me back. After you finish your 4 single crochets and a decrease round, you're going to have 30 stitches, and you can go ahead and pop out that stitch marker. For the next round, you're going to do a repeat of 3 single crochets and then a decrease. So you're going to work 3 single crochets, and then that invisible decrease or regular decrease if you prefer. And you're going to do that 6 times in total. That's going to bring you down to 24 stitches all the way around when you get back to your stitch marker, and you will be ending on a decrease. So go ahead and do your 3 single crochets and a decrease, repeating all the way around till you get back to your stitch marker. Now we're going to do a single crochet round, just a regular single crochet, not in the back loop only or anything, and no increasing, no decreasing. The only thing that we're going to do different this round is when we get to the end, we are actually going to slip stitch. And the reason we're slip stitching is because we're going to be starting to do some ribbing. I really prefer to work in the round in a spiral. I don't like to slip stitch my ends. So rest assured, if you are like me and you don't like to slip stitch at the end of the row, at the end of the round, I only do it when it's necessary. So it is necessary for the ribbing, unfortunately. But we're going to go ahead and single crochet in every stitch around. That's going to be 24 single crochets. And then we are going to slip stitch. And this is another place where your stitch marker will come in handy. At least for me, when I'm doing slip stitching at the end of rounds, my stitch marker really helps me to keep track of where my stitches are so that I don't accidentally work into, you know, I don't turn my slip stitch into an extra stitch, basically. So what you're going to do for the ribbing is you're going to go ahead and pop out your stitch marker, and we're going to slip stitch. And then for the ribbing, what you're going to do is you're going to chain 1, and we are going to do front post and back post half double crochets. For the first half double crochet of the round, we're just going to do a half double crochet, like a regular one, into the same stitch that you just chained out of. Go ahead and place your stitch marker into there. But for the rest of them, you're going to do front post and back post half double crochets. So the way that you do front post and back post half double crochets is this right here is your single crochet that we're working around. Okay, you've got your little V stitch, V looking front. This is the stitch itself. Where I have this needle right now is considered like the post, if you're working around the post of the stitch. So you will put your hook through just like I have this. That is going to be a front post half double crochet. So let me show you. You're going to yarn over your hook, then you're going to take your hook, you're going to go under that post, yarn over and pull up, yarn over and pull through all 3. Now to do a back post one, because we're going to want to alternate between front post and back post, that was a front post. To do a back post, you're going to do the exact same thing, but instead of coming from the front, you're going to go around under the work and come in through the back. And then you're going to go over that stitch and you're going to do your half double crochet. Just like that. So let me show you again. To do a front post half double crochet, you're going to yarn over, you're going to come under that stitch and go around it like that. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through all 3. Now for a back post, you're going to yarn over, you're going to go under your work, you're going to pop up right before the stitch, go over it, and then go back through. You're going to yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. That is going to give you your back post and front post ribbing effect. You're going to continue to do this until you get the length that you want for your golf club cover. This is completely up to you. When I was looking into golf club covers, I noticed there is a vast variety of differences in length for these. So I'm not really going to recommend a specific length. Well, I'll recommend a specific length, but I'm not going to tell you to do a specific length because that's really up to personal preference. I would say about 20 rounds is probably good. So if you continue to do this, front post, back post, alternating half double crochets, And then when you get to the end, you slip stitch, and then you chain 1, half double crochet in the same stitch. Literally what I just showed you, you're just going to repeat that over and over. And it is a little bit easier to work the the front post half double crochet and the back post half double crochet, in my opinion, for the subsequent rounds, because you're not working around a single crochet. The half double crochet is a little bit taller, so it's a little bit easier to work those front and back posts around. But yeah, that's all we're doing. That's the ribbing, and that is the rest of the project, is just finishing up that ribbing. So like I said, go to the length that you want yours to be. I would just give you, if you would like a number to like kind of aim for, I would say probably 20 rounds of these front post and back post half double crochets. No increasing, no decreasing. That's it. Just repeat this, and like I said, slip stitch at the end, chain 1, put that half double crochet in the same stitch, and then just get to going on your front post and back post half double crochets. All right, so this is what it's starting to look like. You can see the ribbing effect starting to show up already. This is what the ribbing effect looks like the more that you do it. And like I said, if you do it about 20 rounds, I think would be a nice good length. But this isn't even 20 rounds. You can just do it however long you want it to be. But I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that you make the cutest little golf club covers. If you would like to share pictures with me, you can send me pictures on Instagram or tag me on Instagram. I am Gnome Creations over there. I also have a Facebook page that you can go to if you want to message me there or comment in the comments on posts. You can put pictures. I'm always happy to see them. Or you can email me. My email is always in the description box on my videos. It is novagnomecreations@gmail.com. But I hope that you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. I hope that you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That subscribe button is just below the video, and also next to that subscribe button is the little thumb icons. I would appreciate it if you would give me a little thumbs up on this video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment below. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you on the next video. Bye, guys.